Welcome to the 5th episode of The Window, the podcast of Montgomery Bell Academy. I'm Zach Riven, the host and a junior at MBA. And today, summer edition, we're here with head coach of track and field, Coach Jan Pippin. Thank you for being here today.
You're so welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, let's get right into it. Our first one here is, what was your first experience with track and how did you get into it?
My very first experience with track was when I was in the first grade. Our PE teacher at the school had what he called a track team, and everybody ran the mile because we went around the city running the fun run that was attached to all the road races around town. So we all ran the mile, and I have a vivid memory of running the mile fun run at Percy Warner Park, and I was coming down the hill to finish, and my principal was there, and he was cheering for me, but when he yelled loud, his face turned red. So he was yelling, and his face was red, so I thought I was in trouble. I thought I hadn't run fast enough, so coming down that hill next to the steps, and I'm running faster and faster. I'm a little 6-year-old, and because I thought I was in trouble, and it turns out that I won the fun run, and all the other kids were behind me, but I thought I was in trouble.
So how did you get to running the mile as a 6-year-old to now head coach at Montgomery Bell Academy?
How
did you get, and did you know that that was something you wanted to do?
No. I didn't run track again until 8th grade after the first grade experience. We had tryouts at my middle school for track, and in the 7th grade, my knee was sore, so I thought I wouldn't make the team, so I didn't try out. So I didn't run track again until 8th grade, and had decent success in the 8th grade, and then ran through high school and college. By nature, I'm a teacher. So even when I was young, I helped my friends with things all the time. And so it was natural for me to move into education and teaching. So it wasn't something that I had to try to figure out. I moved from being a student to being a teacher, and that included my athletics. So as soon as I was done competing at Tennessee and my eligibility was up, I immediately started coaching local kids, and that kind of grew from a pretty small endeavor to where I am now. So it's just kind of always been what I did.
So how'd you get from winning first place in the mile to now being like a sprinter's coach?
Well, when I resumed track in 8th grade, I guess they watched us move and run just like I watch you guys move and run now. And so they put me in hurdles, 200 and 400. I was a jumper. So I guess just them watching and evaluating me, that's just where they put me. I did run a good number of 800s, especially when I was younger. And then in the pentathlon and the heptathlon, it includes the 800. But I think the coaches just recognized speed, and that's where they put me.
For sure.
So,
kind of transitioning here to now you as a head coach, what approach do you take when your team is struggling?
A lot of times I relate, if it's an individual struggle, a lot of times I can relate something that I went through as an athlete and share those experiences to help encourage somebody who's struggling. If our team is struggling, if we're not struggling, something's wrong, really. But if the team is struggling, I try to focus on that's when we go back to our goals that we set, and our individual and our team goals, and I just do a lot of encouraging that way.
And then I believe you coached at Harpeth Hall before MBA. How did that experience compare to here?
When I was at Harpeth Hall, the head coach, her name was Susan Russ, and she spent an enormous amount of time training me. I'm pretty thankful, actually, for her. She would, at the time, you did your entry forms on paper. And so she would hand me a blank entry form and tell me, go home, fill it out, and then let's have lunch and talk about it. So she gave me some opportunities to implement my ideas with her team, really. And she then would point out what she saw maybe as flaws, or maybe I would come up with an idea she hadn't thought of. But she spent a lot of time training me in that way. She also really focused on the mental aspect of athletics. And so I felt like I was still going back to school every day when I was there with her. But what was great about her was she also gave me some freedom to explore and find my own style. And so it was different because I feel like I was still in school almost. And when I came here, Coach Pruitt gave me a lot more responsibility right away. And I'm pretty thankful for the way he trusted me. So,
would you say there's a difference between the all-girls school aspect versus all boys, or would you say it's the same?
I think that's personality and culture, which maybe sometimes is an overused word. But the group of girls that I had at Harpeth Hall were really aggressive, fearless, and so they had a lot of the aspects that you kind of expect in a male athlete, which is why I was having so much fun coaching them. When I came here, I was really sad to leave them. They were pretty brave, to the point that we always had a Good Friday practice there like we have here, and it was always just a brutal workout. Over at Harpeth Hall at the time, they didn't turn on the water at the track until after spring break, or around spring break, because if it got cold and the pipes froze, they would burst. So there was no water turned on. It's a Good Friday morning. Everything's closed. We're the only people on the track, or on the campus, really. We're running this really hard workout, and it's hot. One of the girls was so thirsty that she drank water out of a mud puddle on the side of the track before she finished her workout. And I was like, that's not the image of a Harpeth Hall girl that you expect to hear. But those girls were like that. They were scrappy. They were fearless. So they didn't seem like you typically think girls would seem. But I think that's culture, and I think that's changing now. I think the culture in the girls athletes, some is changing, and but when I came over here, I was used to aggressive. You can say things to boys you can't say to girls. Girls get mad and get their feelings hurt and hold grudges, and boys don't. So that's a very big difference in the way you can coach and teach a girl and the way you can coach and teach a boy. Boys will, get mad, and 3 seconds later they're your best friend again. So that's very different.
And then continuing on the coaching path, what's been your biggest mistake coaching, and then how did you grow from that?
Coach Pruitt's been really good to guide me along the way, but so I couldn't really think of a big, huge thing that I messed up badly. But there's a couple of things that I think we underachieved as a team because I missed them. Sometimes I miss when I'm evaluating athletes and trying to get them in the right events. Sometimes I just miss something that an athlete can naturally be good at. And a really frustrating example of that is we were probably practicing for region. So we were at the end of the season, and I was walking around the corner of the curve by the shot put area with a sprinter, a 400-meter guy, and someone had left a shot out. And he ran over and grabbed it and jumped in the shot ring and just punched it. And he threw it about 42 feet. And I felt like the biggest idiot ever because we needed throwers. And here's this big, fast sprinter who I just it never crossed my mind to try them. So I'm a little bit more aware now about letting people try things they show interest in, even if I'm not sure about that for them. And I'm a little more, I try to be more open-minded about moving kids around the track and events so that I don't miss something like that again.
For sure.
So.
And then being an assistant coach at Harpeth Hall, now as a head coach, what do you look for in an assistant coach when it's time to hire?
Confidence. On the NBA staff, we coach a lot by committee. We all have the same general thought process as far as technique. So sometimes I say we're almost interchangeable because we teach so similarly. I want somebody who's going to be honest and real. 'Cause I think athletes respond better when you're a real person to them. So, but I need somebody who's going to be a confident leader and really just care about the boys more than anything else.
And then how do you get your players to become a team? So whether that's after a graduating class leaves or the beginning of the season or even just middle of the season if team is struggling and there's bad chemistry?
We haven't had a lot of that, and there's lots of thought processes about why, but I try early. Track is so individual that it can be very lonely if you let it be lonely. So I try early in the season we do a service project, and I try to get as many people to come to that as possible. So we spend some time off the track together early. We do silly things like letting the seniors draft their 4x4 relays at the scrimmage. And what the younger athletes don't realize about that is that when they go to the draft, all of the names of all the athletes that are available are written on the board in the classroom, but it's only last name and first initial. So if the seniors don't know the names of their teammates, then they have no idea who they're drafting.
Oh, that's interesting.
So before that draft, the seniors are already trying to learn names and figure out who they're going to draft on that 4x4 so that they can win the Girl Scout cookies. But so I do some things like that to set them up, to try to challenge them to learn names early and be senior leaders. I think when they start to develop relationships with the younger athletes, that it just kind of naturally changes the culture for a more positive.
For sure.
And I think when we focus individually on personal goals and we celebrate when somebody performs a career best or reaches one of their goals, I think that changes the whole feeling on the team. And people feel like they can accomplish and feel successful even if they're not the first person across the finish line. So I think that changes how it feels to be on the team.
You kind of touched on this a second ago. Do you think track is kind of harder to feel like a team sport because there are a lot of individual races outside relays?
I do think it's a struggle. Absolutely. The training's different. You have throwers and you have distance runners. And so it is a little bit harder to feel cohesive, I think. That's why we start every day with a team meeting. That's not just so I can spew information. It's so you can start together every day. And that's when we celebrate some individual accomplishments. And I really try hard to say people's names. So even if you're not scoring points for our team, but you ran your fastest 800 ever, and I say your name in front of your teammates, I think that's a big deal. And I think you've experienced that when you were younger. You were improving, but not getting to run on maybe a varsity relay. But I still said, when you ran your fastest 100, I said your name out loud.
Sure.
And I think that's a big encourager. But I think that pulls them together some too.
I totally agree. And then kind of moving here more about you, how would you describe yourself as a coach? So how do you want the players to see you as a coach? The runners.
I hope they know I care about them individually, like as people, because that's really the most important thing to me. And I try to get to know as many of them as I can as people. So I want them to see me as that, but I also hope they know I'm pretty demanding. But that the way I'm demanding is just I expect their best every day.
Okay.
So it's not about, I think the winning, the scoring points thing comes along with doing your best every day. So my expectations are high as far as that, as far as doing the right thing, being a good teammate, taking care of each other when you need it. So I hope those things come across.
And then your ideals for NBA track as a team. So how do you want the team to be, what do you want the goals of the team to be outside just purely winning?
Self-improvement, which I've kind of said the whole time we were sitting here. There's a lot about track and field that can develop you individually, and so that's why we set short-term goals and long-term goals for ourselves, because I think that keeps people focused on moving forward.
For sure. And I mean, the thing about track that I find interesting is it's not only a race, against the person like to your left and right, but against the time. I think that's also a good way to self-improvement like you're
Right.
talking about. The biggest surprise that came with coming to NBA or just starting coaching in general?
So when I came to NBA, I think I'm not misspeaking. I think I was the only female coach. I think I was
Wow.
the first female coach at NBA, I think.
Okay.
So when I came to NBA, the boys weren't used to a female in athletics. And I was young and fit, and I could demonstrate a lot. And I brought drills to them that were different than what they were
Hadn't seen
accustomed to.
before.
And so they thought I was crazy. They did what I asked, but they thought I was crazy. And when we were working on baton handoffs for sprint relays specifically, I made them do a lot more reps than they were accustomed to doing. And they got pretty frustrated that I would do things like when we got close to region and state, I would make them do handoffs until they could do 6 in a row to my satisfaction. And if they got to 5 and they messed it up, we started over at 1. So we did lots of exchanges. And they weren't accustomed to that. That goes back to the consistency. I think you have to do daily, you have to be consistent in order to improve as an athlete. So they thought I was crazy. But they took it, and it didn't take long for us to bond. But I mean, that was just a surprise on my part and a surprise for them. Both, I think, was kind of fun.
I like that. Tell me about the 3 most influential people in your life and how they impacted you. So that could be totally separate from track.
Yeah.
Track.
So 100% the most influential person to me was my dad. I tell people all the time I should have been a boy because I like fishing and football and playing in the dirt and catching salamanders. But my dad encouraged that. He would challenge me physically. He would let me take risk and kind of almost force me to take risks. He taught me to throw a ball. He taught me to swing a bat. He never missed anything I did, whether it was music or athletics. But I think that my risk-taking came from him initially, and I also think my organizational skills came from him. My mom tells me all the time I make her sick because I'm ridiculously organized. My husband calls me Monica from Friends. But all that came from my dad. And so 100% my dad is the at the top of that list. My high school coach, which is kind of you expect to hear, my high school coach for different reasons. I always asked him why we were running the workout we were running, why he ran particular people in particular races. I always wanted to know why. And instead of blowing me off, he always took the time to explain to me why, which I now as a coach appreciate because I was already learning, though I didn't realize where I was going with my athletics. But he always took the time to explain why to me. And so that was important, I think, in how I coach now. But the other thing he did for me is he felt really strongly that you should give back to the community. And I heard him say that repeatedly. And so I've always felt like when you have a talent, you have a responsibility to give it back and spread it. And so not only athletically, but, as a moral person of character and serving our community in other ways. So I learned all of that from my high school coach, which I'm pretty thankful for. And then my high school band director was in different ways challenging to me. And he taught me how to manage my classroom and manage big groups of people. So those are probably the first 3, I would say.
What instrument did you play?
I'm a bassoonist.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How'd you get into that?
Well, band started in 5th grade,
Okay.
and when we started in band, I had already been playing piano since 1st grade, so I was a pretty decent musician already. And my mom went to the band director and told the band director that she wanted me to play the bassoon because bassoonists are hard to find, and so if you're good at bassoon, you can probably get scholarship money in college. So the band director didn't really even give me a choice because my mom told him what she wanted me to play. So I got forced to play the bassoon. Turned out fine. I like it, but
It's unique.
for a little while I didn't like it because I was tiny and the case was big, and I was using the school instrument because they're very expensive. So I had this old beat up, smelly instrument. It was kind of one of those, when I got on the school bus, I felt like Forrest Gump because no one wanted to sit by me with my big case, and I could barely get it on the bus with me because it was bigger than me, and so it was hard for a bit, but it's fun now.
You still play it?
Yeah, I still play.
And then last couple of questions here. If you could give advice to future coaches, what would that be? And then the best advice you've received.
Advice to future coaches. The first thing I've already said to you is I think you have to be a real person. Students see through fake and don't respect fake. And so be yourself and let them know you as a human being. And I think that goes a lot further in your athletics than if you're trying to be somebody that you're not. Be honest and be fair, whatever that means, because that's hard too. Sometimes you have to make decisions that are best for the team that an individual might not like, and that's a hard thing to do, or when you have to make choices like that. So be honest and find a way to be fair when you're making those kinds of choices. Best advice I received? Wow.
It could be
Man.
from parent, coach.
I don't know.
Would you just say that those three most influential people inspired you to kind of act and coach the way you do now?
Well, I think it's a product of all of those things. Yeah.
For sure. And then last two questions here. What do you think the hardest race is in track? Top three.
Hands down, hardest race on the track, 400-meter hurdles.
Okay.
Which we don't run in high school. We run 300 hurdles, but 400 hurdles are the most brutal race, followed probably closely behind by the 800.
Okay.
Because people look at the 800 as a distance race, but it's pretty much a sprint, and it hurts. So I would say those two are the hardest to. Obviously, decathlon or heptathlon is pretty brutal on your body and takes hours more of training than just running one race. So.
Do you think the average person could run a sub-60 400?
The average
It's the average
high school.
average 20-year-old person.
No,
Even though if they're in shape,
maybe.
so it could go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I think for an average female who's just training in the gym to stay reasonably fit, 60 might be a little fast.
Okay.
I would think that guys who are in decent shape should be able to do that.
Okay. And then our last question here is, how do you define greatness?
So there are a lot of ways you could be great, but I think mental toughness and within reason being a good risk taker can make you great. I think constant striving for improvement, but you have to be consistent with that. So I think that can define some greatness. Compassion for others, being a good friend and a good teammate. So there are a lot of different ways you can be great, but I think that being consistent and always doing your best.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that concludes us for today. So unless you have anything else to add, thank you again for doing this. I know
welcome.
it's busy time, summer starting, but thank you again.
Thanks for having me.